Good morning, boys and girls. So we have continually been working on graphing, and we are just going to continue that today. Instead of actually making a graph today, we are going to focus on numerical patterns. We've been looking at a lot of data and taking that data and graphing it on a coordinate grid. And today we're going to look at tables still that have data, but there are going to be some blanks, as you can see. That means this data has a pattern. It's going to be our job to determine the pattern and fill in those blanks with the numbers that are supposed to go there. Then tomorrow, we are going to look at filling in the patterns, and we're going to go a step further, and then we're going to graph the data from the table that we are filling in those blanks for. So today, we're going to focus on how to determine the patterns, and then tomorrow, we're going to add a step to it, and we're actually going to graph the patterns that we found from our data. So, first thing that I want to point out is you can see that there are 3 rows in our data, which we haven't really seen yet. That's okay. We have to look at our days first, then we look at our number of pencils, then we have the amount spent, right? So on day 1, they had 5 pencils and they spent $15. Well, it's really hard to look at all 3 of those lines of data together. So as you can see on our screen, we first need to identify the first row pattern. So we look at the pattern from days to the number of pencils. Then we'll look at the patterns from number of pencils to amount spent. So we take it one row at a time and we continue from there. So if you look at the little notes I have at the top of the screen here, this is a reminder for us when we're trying to solve patterns. If our number gets bigger, that means that our rule is either going to be multiplication or addition, because that's how you increase the numbers. If our number gets smaller, that means that we are either dividing or subtracting. So that's the first thing we need to figure out when we're looking at our numbers. Is it getting bigger? Is it getting smaller? And then we'll determine, are we adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing? Okay, so let's start by looking at pencils. Alrighty, we have on day 1, we have 5 pencils. Okay, well, from 1 to 5, our number is getting bigger, right? 5 is bigger than 1. So we know we're either going to be multiplying or adding for our first row pattern. Well, if we were adding, what would the rule be? How do we get 1 to 5? 1 plus what equals 5? 4. If we were multiplying, what would the rule be? 1 times what equals 5? 5. 1 times 5 equals 5. What this means is that we know that 1 plus 4 equals 5 and 1 times 5 equals 5. So our rule could either be plus 4 or times 5. In order to determine which one of those rules is correct, we need to check it with the rest of the numbers in the row. So 2 plus 4 does equal 6, right? 2 plus 4 is 6. Okay, let's check the multiplication rule. 2 times 5. 2 times 5 equals 10, not 6. So that means that times 5 is not our rule. But we want to check the rest just to make sure that plus 4 works. 3 plus 4 equals 7. 4 plus 4 equals 8. And 5 plus 4 equals 9. So our rule for the first row is plus 4. Now, we need to figure out, they gave us 2 numbers in the third row. We need to figure out how to get from the second row to the third row. This does not mean that it is connected to the first 2 rows, right? We look at the first row with the second row, then we look at the second row with the third row. They're going to have 2 separate rules from each other. So the rule here is probably not going to be plus 4. So we need to look. 5 to 15. Did we get bigger or did we get smaller? That's right, we got bigger. So we know our rule is either going to be plus or times. But we need to see which would work. So how would I get from 5 to 15 if I was adding? 5 plus what equals 15? 10, right? So our rule could be plus 10, or it could be times what? How would you get 5 times what equals 15? 3. Great job. So we know that our rule to go from the second row to the third row is either plus 10 or times 3. So let's look at our second numbers that they gave us and see which one works. 6 plus 10 equals 16. But this number is 18. So plus 10 is not our rule. Let's see if times 3 work. What is 6 times 3? 18. So that means our rule is times 3. We need to fill in these 3 boxes. So we have to do 7 times 3, and we get 21. So we know that the amount spent on day 3 was 21. Then we move to 8 times 3, which is 24. And then we have 9 times 3, which is 27. Great job. So we just filled out our table using patterns. Let's try one more together, and then you will have one to try on your own. You can see here that this box has a few more spaces than we had in our first table. So we can't start with our first boxes, right? Because one goes to blank. I don't know. So we're actually going to have to start with the second box, and we'll check it with the third and fourth box to see if we're right. So going from 2 to 20, is our number getting bigger or is our number getting smaller? It's getting bigger. So we're either going to add or multiply, just like in the first one. Okay, what would I add to get from 2 to 20? 18. So my rule could be plus 18. Or if I multiplied, 2 times what equals 20? 10. So my rule is either plus 18 or times 10. Well, let's look here. What is 3 plus 18? Well, 8 plus 3 is 11. And then I have to carry a 1, and 1 plus 1 is 2. So that'd be 21. Well, this box says 30, so my rule cannot be plus 18. So let's check times 10. What is 3 times 10? 30. We can check the next box. 4 times 10 is 40. So our rule for first to second row is times 10. So we need to fill in these boxes on the second row. 1 times 10 is 10. So the number of erasers in one bag is 10. So that means that the number of erasers in 8 bags is going to be 80. Great job. Now, our third row is the weight. We know that one bag has 10 erasers and weighs 30 pounds, ounces. They don't really tell us what they measured it in. Okay, so one bag of 10 erasers, the weight is 30. We're trying to determine how much 2 bags weighs and how much 3 bags weighs. So we need to find the pattern. We went from 10 erasers weighing 30. So is that a bigger number or a smaller number? It's bigger, right? So we're still either going to be adding or multiplying. Okay, if we were adding, how would we get from 10 to 30? 10 plus what equals 30? 10 plus 20. So our rule could be plus 20. Or if it's a multiplication rule, how would we get to 30? 10 times what equals 30? 3. Y'all are awesome. So our rule is either plus 20 or times 3. Well, we can't check it with 20 and we can't check it with 30 because those are the boxes we're trying to fill in. So let's check it with 40. 40 plus 20 is 60. But my weight is 120, so that's not going to work. But what is 40 times 3? Well, 4 times 3 is 12, and then I have that 0, so it's 120. So I know that my rule is going to be times 3. Now let's fill in those other boxes. So what that means is that we have 20 times 3, and you can write it out and solve it, or you can do the basic fact method. We know we have 2 times 3, which is 6, and then we have that 0 on the end of the 20, so it makes it 60. And then to fill in the last box, we have 30 times 3. 3 times 3 is 9, and then we add that 0 at the end just like before, and you have figured out some numerical patterns to finish filling out your tables. Remember, you have a short assignment after this, and I'll see you again tomorrow to graph the data that we just figured out. Have a great rest of your day.